Hey, Taylor Old here, and today I thought I would talk about the topic of how you overcome self-sabotage in your life, really. Not just in your magical work, but in your life. Because I find that sometimes your worst enemy is actually you, right? With your magic in your life. Like, have you ever, for example, you went out there and you did a magical working for a result, and you got the result, and then suddenly the result went away. Well, why did that happen? I'm not going to say it's every single time, but I would say a majority of the time, chances are, you probably self-sabotaged yourself. So let's take a moment and define what self-sabotaging is. In this case, when I'm talking about self-sabotaging, I'm talking about the fact that self-sabotaging is where a part of yourself basically is sabotaging what you want. A part of you is saying, I don't want this. Or a part of you is saying, I don't deserve this, or I'm not worthy of this, or any number of other self-sabotaging things. We all have self-sabotages. I have self-sabotages. Everyone I know has self-sabotages. This is a normal part of life, unfortunately. However, it doesn't mean we have to settle for continuing to self-sabotage ourselves. What it does mean is that we have to focus on becoming aware of them, because we may not always be aware of our self-sabotages. You know, the self-sabotage is that subtle voice in your head, that whisper that says you're not worthy, or you don't deserve this, or you can't get X, or whatever else it is. It's that thing that steers your behavior in ways where you look back and you're like, why did that happen? Well, why did it happen? Because some part of you sabotaged yourself. So the first key to overcoming or working through self-sabotage is that you actually have to become aware of them. And the best way to do that is to take a look at your life and see if there are consistent patterns. If you can look back at your life and you can say, I see consistent patterns here, here, and here, and here, okay, well, there's something going on there, so what's causing that pattern? Why, for example, if you're doing magical work and you're consistently getting results, but then they're consistently going away, well, there's a pattern there. What's really going on underneath that pattern? What's forming that pattern? So look at your life in terms of the patterns, like what is happening in your life? Why are you having certain experiences happen? And when you see that pattern, then you can start to make changes. And I'll use an example for myself, because this is a great example. A couple years ago, I was really trying to make online marketing work for my businesses, and it didn't. One of the patterns that I came away with, though, when I looked back, is that I saw that I would start projects, and I would get partway through, and I wouldn't get what I wanted in terms of a result, and I would pivot and turn to the next thing. And I was constantly learning, constantly doing, but nothing I was doing was really producing what I wanted, and I was constantly pivoting to other things. You can see the self-sabotage here, right? I hadn't committed to a solid course of action. I mean, there were other reasons that all of that didn't work out, but that actually is a big one right there when I look at it. Knowing that has helped me to really identify the fact that I need to slow down with what I'm trying to do. So like this summer, what I did is I decided to self-publish a couple of my books to see what it would be like, how I would do if I self-published them. I spent some time really researching what self-publishing would look like. I spent some time setting up the two books and really studying the numbers and seeing how things went. And I used that as a way to help me make a decision about where I wanted to go with my publishing. I took my time instead of just pivoting, and I really took my time to look at the results. I took my time to look at the process, and I worked the process until I made sure I understood how it worked and that I could replicate it. And then I replicated it for everything else. And so now I have all my books being self-published, and I'm seeing that pattern continue to unfold in a way that's positive. There's no self-sabotage here because I took my time. Because I identified the previous pattern where I would learn something and pivot, learn something and pivot. Right now I'm engaged in this 30-day course for online marketing, coincidentally enough, and one of the promises I made to myself is I am not going to work on the schedule of the person offering the course. I'm going to work on my own schedule. So I've been very slow and deliberate. I've been going through each of the lessons each day, but what I'm doing is really taking my time with it and learning it and making sure I understand it, and knowing that I don't have to push myself at a faster pace than I want to go. Realizing that has helped me significantly shift my approach to that thing. But that could only happen if I was willing to look back and see where I sabotage myself. And where I sabotage myself is I got focused on trying to get results and I pivoted each time I didn't get results to something new instead of staying focused on it. I also got too caught up in the results. I was so focused on what I wanted. I wanted to be making, X amount of money, and I wanted X amount of clients, and I wanted all this other stuff. And when I wasn't getting it, that became the thing that took over. I got obsessed with results, which, not a good thing to do when you're a magician, right? But hey, we all make that mistake, and I made it. No problem owning that. But I was sabotaging myself in that way where I was basically putting myself into a situation where no matter what I was doing, I was continually pivoting because I wasn't getting the results I wanted. And so I was self-sabotaging my efforts. Being able to look back at that and see that, I've since decided I need to slow down. I need to look at things. The other thing I realized too is that I really needed to go back and learn online marketing from a very foundational place, a very basic place that I really understood the underlying principles. So, I share this story with you because it's a good example of like in your own life where if you are sabotaging yourself all the time, there are going to be patterns there. And if you can take the time to stop and look at those patterns, you can start to change them. Now, I'll admit in my particular case, I ended up really stopping everything for about a year. I stopped basically in November of last year, a year from, and what I did is I started looking at everything and I started figuring stuff out, and I spent a good about 7-8 months just figuring out where things went wrong and why. It may not take you that long to figure stuff out. It did for me. Granted, though, I'd been in business for 9 years, and so I wasn't just looking at the last couple of years, I was really looking at all of the years in business, and I was seeing a pattern that emerged out of that. And it really helped me to understand and see where I had self-sabotaged myself all along. I share that with you because I think a lot of times in our lives, we only look at the most recent patterns. Well, if you've had a lifelong pattern, or if you've had a pattern over a prolonged period of time, it's worth really looking at that in order to identify how you're self-sabotaging yourself. Once you identify the self-sabotage, then you have to go and make changes to that behavior. In my case, as I shared, I decided that one of the things I had to do was start to slow down and really work a given process until I made sure I fully understood it. And one of the other things that I've done is I've promised myself that I'm going to return to the processes that I've learned and look at them again and rework them again. And why is that? Because again, when you think you've learned something, you can learn something pretty well and have a good understanding of it, but there may be things that you missed anyway. So I know for myself, for example, that I'm going to go back through like some of the stuff that I learned in regards to self-publishing again and really study it all over again after I finish this current online marketing challenge thing that I'm in. Because it's going to help me to A, meld it into what I think I can do with the online marketing, but B, it's going to help me to really make sure that I understand the process and that if there are things that are missing, that I can go back in and change those. So again, this is how I'm correcting that self-sabotage. I'm not just slowing down, I'm also looking at the fact that, okay, maybe I need to revisit this stuff in order to make sure I fully understand it and grasp it. Now that may not be your corrective course, and I'm using myself as an example here, but when you think about your own self-sabotage and the pattern, once you've identified what the pattern is and you've identified like what you can do to change it, then you also need to start identifying like how you can be proactive. You want to build a system around it that's going to allow you to make changes and then iterate those changes and optimize them, basically improve on what you've done. Because when you can improve on what you've already done, then you'll see gradual and steady improvements in everything else that you're doing. And I know for myself with like the publishing, once I went in and I did it, you know, first I got it set up, then I optimized it, and now I've iterated it. But through all of that, I have basically made little tweaks in the self-publishing that have helped me to improve on the process every single time. And that is making a significant impact in terms of what I'm doing. Now what I'm starting to do is look at, you know, what comes after the self-publishing and how I can start to set that up and optimize it and iterate it. So again, you know, it's that's me. But in this case, like with your own self-sabotages, you've got to figure out like what can you do to tweak these things and improve upon them and make changes. Once you understand what changes you need to make to your behavior, to your process, whatever else, you'll find that you start to catch those self-sabotages a lot more easily, and you start to iron them out a lot quicker. And so like in my case, I know like right now, one of the things that I've kind of been really sitting with is that sometimes I feel this urge to rush, to hurry, to try and get things done. And I realize it's another form of that self-sabotage. So what am I doing? Well, I'm deliberately slowing down. I'm deliberately saying, well, this is what I can do. And I'm okay with that. Because if I do it this way, it's going to be more methodical. So, you know, you want to recognize too that just even if you set something up, there's still going to be that tendency to self-sabotage, and that you have to recognize what's going on there. The other thing you want to do is you want to get into the psychology of the self-sabotage. And what I mean by that is what's really going on with that self-sabotage. Why are you feeling the way that you're feeling? What's motivating it? And not everything that motivates a self-sabotage is necessarily bad. But you want to understand what's motivating it so that you can address it in a way that allows it to be heard. Like in my case, if I look at my self-sabotage, I can tell you basically what it is. At one time, it has always been the same thing. I want to achieve a certain level of freedom in my life. I want to know that I can be able to do what I want, when I want, however I want, and at the same time have the financial resources and whatnot that you know will allow me to do it indefinitely and not ever have to worry about anything. So when I start to feel that need to hurry up, I realize that that's that part of me that's saying, I need to be free. I need to blah, 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 blah. What I have to do is go and speak to that part of myself. That's a good part to have. It's motivating me to do what I want to do, so I don't have a problem with it. But I need to help that part recognize that what it's doing is potentially sabotaging me. So what I do is I go, okay, great. I know you want to be that way, and I want to be that way, so let's look at what we've done today to get there. Oh, but it's not fast enough. It's not about fast. It's not about fast at all. It's about doing it right. Take your time. Get everything set up right. Make sure that verify that you're getting the results that you do want without getting obsessed about them. Once that's done, move on to the next step. By taking that time to really hone in on that, and to basically help myself focus and not get scattered, because that's what happened to me. I got scattered, you know, I went in all these different directions instead of being like and focused. By learning to focus myself, what I've done is I have helped myself achieve an awareness that is allowing me to take methodical, progressive steps toward where I want to be and get me to that place of freedom that I want to be at. So you see, when we talk about this kind of stuff, it's very important to recognize it and see it and understand it. It's not even so much about overcoming the sabotage as it's learning to work with what's really going on underneath and finding a way to proactively address it and resolve it and either meet a need or at least show that need that you are making steps toward meeting it. When you can do that, then your self-sabotages become allies because you've changed them into something that motivates you and moves you in the right direction, and you started addressing the issue instead of letting it take over your life and destroy what you're doing. So those are my thoughts on how to overcome, I mean really how to identify and work around and work with your self-sabotages, how to really get to the heart of what's going on and make changes accordingly so that you're no longer sabotaging yourself. And I would really say any time that you do sabotage yourself, you got to ask yourself, okay, if I wanted X and I got in the way of that, what's really going on? Why am I getting in the way? What is happening? What am I not paying attention to? And once you start paying attention to that and you start making some changes, that's when you find that your life gets easier, that things start to align a lot easier, and you go off in the right direction. Okay, that's it for today. Just wanted to share that thought, and I hope you all have a wonderful week coming up. Take care.